For this video, we are going to be walking through the making of this sweater. This is the Biel sweater, and you can find the crochet pattern for free on my website, which is RebeccaVelasquez.com. I am Rebecca, and I am going to teach you the beginning to end of this sweater. So we are going to go from slip knot until we weave in the final end. So if you have never even heard of a linked double crochet, much less ever tried to make one, or if you have never changed colors in your work, don't worry about it. Don't be intimidated by it. I am going to work through it step by step with you and hopefully teach you a few other tips and tricks along the way. Some of the supplies you're going to need to make your sweater are 2 different colors of the Low Tide yarn by Lion Brand Yarns. I used Jetty for my main color and Reef for the stripes. Now, no matter what size you are making for the stripe color of yarn, you're only going to need 1 skein of the stripe, your contrasting color. The main color is going to vary depending on what size you're making, so refer back to your pattern for how many skeins of this yarn you're going to need. This is a size 4 medium weight yarn, or a worsted weight yarn. Do remember though that not all yarns will work up the same, so make sure and get your gauge swatch made and that you are getting gauge. Some of the other supplies you're going to need are 2 different size crochet hooks. We used an L in the beginning, and then you switch to a K for the main body of the sweater. So that's an 8mm and a 6.5mm. You'll also need, of course, a good pair of scissors, a tapestry needle, a tape measure, and 5 stitch markers. I'm going to have all of the different details of when we do different stitches and make different changes for pieces that we're working on. I'll have everything time-stamped in the description below, so I'll have all of that done for you. So go ahead, open up another tab in your computer, get the pattern pulled up, gather all of your supplies, and we'll get started. The Biel sweater starts with a foundation single crochet rather than the traditional chain because it has a beautiful finish to it and there's no need for any extra edging. And also it has a bit of forgiveness in it and some elasticity to it. I wanted the sweater to stay very boxy and to not cinch in at the waist any. So that is why I chose to start with the foundation single crochet. This is actually also the reason why you will need to make your foundation row with a larger hook. So make sure that you have your L or your 8mm, and we will make this first row. The way to make the foundation single crochet is to begin with a basic slip knot. Get that on your hook. And you will begin stitching by doing a chain 2. Now, rather than working into these upper or top loops of the chain, we are going to give it a twist, and you see these back ridges? This is where you're going to place your hook. So in the second chain from your hook into this back ridge is where you will insert your hook and pull up a loop. So now you have the 2 loops on your hook. From here, what we are going to do is to create the foundation chain that is going to be for your first stitch. So worked as a regular chain, you yarn over and pull through 1. Now you have these 2 loops on your hook, and this is what we will use to complete the single crochet. So yarn over and pull through 2. So if we take a closer look, you can see where you now have the chain here on bottom and your single that is right on top. A little tip on working with the foundation single crochets is that sometimes when you are working back across on your return row, this unused chain right here can cause a little bit of confusion. So what I like to do is put a stitch marker right here under the loops of my first single crochet. Let me get that, there we go. And that way, whenever you are working your return row, you won't question whether or not you need to be working into that chain. You will know that this is the last stitch for that row. Making the second stitch is slightly different than the first. What I like to do is to shift my work so that it is vertical. For me, it just makes it easier to see the placement of the stitches. So what you want to do is to find the two left loops of the chain that you've just made. And that is where you will insert your hook. And then you draw up a loop. And just as before, you want to create the chain and then complete the two loops a single. So I'll show you again. It is these left two loops from the foundation chain previously made right here. You will insert your hook under those loops. Grab them both. Pull up a loop, make that chain and the single. So these are the steps that you repeat for the foundation single crochet all the way across. I'll show you again. We'll walk through it. Go through those two chain loops, pull up a loop, make your foundation chain and the single that sits on top. So if this stitch is new to you, it's kind of easy to get lost sometimes on where it is that you're working. You've got loops here and some on the top. So if you will just take what you're working on and lay it down, you can see the singles and the chains underneath. That makes it a little easier for placement. You know that this is where you're going to work into. These chains here on the bottom. So I'll pick it up again and I'll show you one more time. These are the tops for the single. This is the body of the stitch, and these here running along the left side are the chain. So we'll go under that chain and grab the second one there in the back. Pull up a loop, chain, and single. Okay, so from here what you want to do is refer to the pattern for the number of foundation singles that you need to make for the size that you're making. So press pause and come back when you have your foundation row complete, and we will move on to the next row. At this point, you have a stretchy one row base to stitch your setup row into. Make sure that you switch to the smaller K hook for the body of the sweater. This little section is going to be very quick because we are only working one row before we move on, and it's a nice and easy one. For the setup row, what we want to do is a chain one, and we are going to just single crochet in every stitch across the foundation row. So this one, again, nice and easy, just making singles in every stitch across. Now don't forget that we have put the stitch marker in the last stitch, what will be the last stitch of this row. So once you reach that stitch marker, make your single crochet in that last stitch and come back to the video and we will learn how to make those linked double crochets. All right, now we are ready to work the body of our sweater. The first stitch of every row is called a stacked double crochet. Essentially what you'll be doing is stacking one single crochet on top of another. So it's the height of a double crochet, the same as a chain 3. However, the stacked double leaves a perfectly clean and straight edge. Now, if you'd rather use the chain 3 in the beginning, absolutely go ahead and do that. But I'm going to show you how to work the stacked double. Now, the first thing that we do is go straight into the stitch. There is no chaining in the beginning, and you make a single crochet. Now, because we didn't make any chain, the single that we've just created is very slanted. You can see that this is the top of the single, and buried in there are the 2 legs that you are used to seeing, but on a very slanted direction here. But what you're actually looking for in a stacked double, you want to turn it and find this back vertical bar. This bar back here is where you are going to be putting your hook. So you'll take your hook and you will insert it under that back bar. Let me give it a little help. And you pull up a loop. Now you have the 2 loops on your hook, and you will just complete that single. You can see here how there are 2 singles stacked right on top of each other. Now actually, before I move any further, I'm going to take the stitch marker from the first row, from the foundation row, and move it to mark the top of this stacked double that we've just created. So we will put that marker right there under those top stitches, the top loops, so that when we are working our return row, we don't accidentally miss that. Because you'll see as we work the next couple of stitches, it gets a little crowded up here. Okay, so the second stitch of the row is a beginning linked double crochet. Now, they're called linked stitches because they are actually physically linked to the previous stitch that you've just made. For the beginning linked, we are going to join with this far edge vertical bar of the stacked double. It is this lower level, this first single crochet, outer edge vertical bar that we're looking for. And you will just insert your hook under that bar, and pull up a loop. From here, you go straight into the next stitch. Now you have 3 loops on your hook, so you want to complete the double, a yarn over, draw through 2, yarn over, draw through 2. Now your next stitches are all linked double crochets. They are worked pretty much exactly the same as what we have done with the stacked double. However, the placement of the stitches is a little easier to find. We are going to be using this horizontal bar that runs right through the middle of that stitch we just made. That is the linking loop that we will use. So you will go under that horizontal bar and pull up a loop. And again, you go straight into the next stitch and pull up a loop. From here, we'll complete that double with the 3 that are on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Now you can see how that horizontal line is starting to emerge. So we'll do it again, right under that bar, pull up a loop, and in the next stitch, pull up, using those 3, complete the double, You see how defined that is starting to become. We'll do it one more time under that horizontal bar and into the next stitch. Complete the double, and again. And I'm actually going to stop here, and I am going to grab another stitch marker, and I'm going to put it under the loop of one of the stitches that we've made. And this is just going to mark the right side of our fabric. So if later down the road when we're working, if we get lost on where we are or which row we're needing to be working, we can tell that this is the right side of the fabric. So I'm going to make a few more of those. Under that horizontal bar, pull up a loop, into the next stitch, pull up a loop, complete the double. And I will show you what it is that we're making. This lower horizontal bar right here is the middle, this middle bar that we are going through to link the stitch. This second horizontal bar is created on the next row, you will see, because they are worked in the front loop only. So that will leave this loop here, this loop unworked. So you will have two very pronounced horizontal bars running through your fabric on the rows. Under that horizontal, into the next stitch, and complete the double. So let's go ahead and complete this row, and we will come back and quickly work the first few stitches of the next row just to show you how it's done, and we'll do a refresher on the stack double and the beginning linked stitch. I will also timestamp those down in the comments for you, but we'll come back and work them once more together after we complete this row. So remember, the first stitch of every row is that stacked double crochet, and I will show you again how to work that. You go straight into the first stitch and pull up a loop, and you will complete a single, and then turning your work, that back vertical bar, insert your hook under that bar and pull up a loop. With the two loops on your hook, you will complete that single, and there is your stacked double. The second stitch of every row is the beginning linked double crochet. To link the stitch, you will find this outer edge vertical loop that's on the lower portion of the stacked double we just created, and you will go under that loop and pull up loop. Now, because we are on the wrong side of the fabric, instead of going under both loops for the next stitch, you will be working in the front loop only. So you will go under that front loop and pull up a loop, yarn over through two, yarn over through two, and that completes the beginning linked double on this row. All the stitches for the rest of the row are the linked double crochets. Remember, we are using this horizontal bar to link the stitches. So you go under that bar, pull up a loop, and again, this is the wrong side of the fabric, so we're working in the front loop only. So you will go under that front loop and pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through two and two, completing the double. We'll do that again under the horizontal, pull up a loop, this front loop only, pull up a loop, draw through two and two. And this is the stitch, this front loop only linked double is what you'll work across the rest of the row. It is these 2 rows that you will be repeating to complete your sweater body. You'll need to refer to your pattern for the number of repeats of these 2 rows that you'll need to make. When you have completed the repeats of the body of your sweater, come back and we will make a sleeve. We are at a point of our sweater that we are now ready to add the sleeves. What you need to make sure of first is that you are going to be working on the right side of your sweater body. And what you'll need to do is, for this first row of the sleeve, this is sleeve 1, the first thing that we need to do is chain 33. So now I'm ready with my chain 33. If you want to test the length of the sleeve, if you're wanting your sleeves to maybe be a little shorter, a little longer, you can hold the sweater up to your body and see where this is going to fall on your arm, and you can just subtract some of the chains or add some more if you want it to be a little longer. That number is not going to make a difference in any shaping or anything later in the pattern. So if you have 30 or 37, that's fine. Do whatever is going to fit you the best. So from here, we are going to continue in the pattern. It is worked again exactly the same as the rest of the body. In your first stitch, you are going to make a stacked double. Now, because we're working into a chain, I am once again going to be working in the back ridge of my chains just for the cleaner edge, the cleaner lower edge that it gives. And again, that stacked double, no beginning chains. You go straight into your first stitch and you make a single. And then in that back vertical bar, pull up a loop, make another single. And again, for your second stitch, it is going to be a beginning linked double. So you use this outer vertical bar here on the first single that you made for the stacked double. So you again go under that bar, pull up a loop, go into the next stitch, pull up a loop. With the 3, we're going to complete the double. And every stitch across the row is going to be a linked double. So under that horizontal bar, into the next stitch, which is the back ridge of that chain, and complete the double. Okay, so from this point, you want to complete your linked doubles all the way across this chain. And then when you get to the body of the sweater, you will continue with your linked doubles. Now, because we are working in the back ridge of this chain, when you get to the body, you will see that you're going to have a half twist. That's okay. It's not going to show. Whenever you start to seam your sweater, it's going to hide any twist in that chain. So just go ahead and work from the back ridge straight into the next stitch. Don't worry about the twist, and complete the linked doubles all the way across the body of the sweater. When you get to the end, you'll turn and work the second sleeve exactly the same as this one. You will do your chain. For me, again, it's going to be the 33. If you chose to alter the pattern, whether it be the 30 or 37, whatever number it is that you chose to do, that is going to be your beginning chain. And you will once again stacked double, beginning linked double, and you will link double all the way across the chain. Now remember, when you come to the body on the return row, you will be working on the wrong side of the fabric, which means you will need to stitch in the front loop only on the return row of the second sleeve. So you will come across your chains with your linked doubles. On the body, it's the front loop only linked doubles, and then you will come to your second sleeve, and again, it's the front loop linked doubles all the way to the edge. Check your pattern, see how many rows you need to make in your main color, complete up to the point of striping, and when we come back, I will show you how to change colors to do the striping on your sleeve. Okay, so now we are ready to add the stripes of our sweater. I've already added one here just to show you what it's going to look like, what the edges will end up looking like when you have completed the rows. Yes, every stripe is going to produce a tail to weave in at both the beginning and the end of the row. It's no fun, but the stripes to me are definitely worth it. So I'm going to show you right here how to switch colors, how to go from your main color to your contrast color. So it looks like I have one more of the regular linked doubles to work. Also, I should note, your stripes, your contrasting stripes, are worked on the wrong side row every time. So your main color is being worked under both loops of that contrast color. So I've made that last stitch. Now the very last stitch of the row is where the color change takes place. You're going to go into that horizontal bar just as normal, under the 2 loops of the very last stitch as normal. And what we are going to do here is work the stitch halfway. So we'll yarn over and pull through 2. Now to complete the stitch, what we want to do is to pick up the tail of the contrast yarn. And you will leave yourself about 6 to 8 inches, whatever you're comfortable with for weaving in the tail. You're going to pick that up. You're going to add it to your main yarn, or the yarn of the row that you're working on. And using both yarns, you will yarn over and pull through. At this point, you will take your scissors and you will cut, I've already cut this one, but you will cut your main yarn, again, leaving a length that you're comfortable with for weaving in a tail. So you'll cut that main yarn, and I usually just go ahead and pull my hook out. I grab the loop of the color that I'm no longer using, pull it free, and now I have the loop of the contrast color, or the loop of the stripe I'm going to be working next. And you just turn your work and you are set up to make your next stitch. This might feel a little loose because this loop isn't really tied into any of the work previously, but you can tighten that up whenever you are weaving in your end. So you just work across this row as you have the entire sweater. You go into the first stitch to make your stacked double, and through that back bar, and complete the stitch. You can see right here, if you pull the tail, how it tightens that edge loop. And that edge vertical bar is where you will go in to make your beginning linked double for this row. And again, this is the wrong side of the fabric, so we are using the front loop only. And you will just continue across the same way you have worked this sweater up to this point. Going in that horizontal bar, the front loop, and creating those linked doubles all the way across. I am going to pause this and speed up, get over to the other edge, and I will show you one more time how to switch that color. Alright, so I have made it across that next stripe, and I'm going to show you again how to change color. So we'll make the first half of the last stitch. The 3, you'll yarn over, pull through 2, and again, you want to leave yourself enough of a tail for weaving in, and you will clip that yarn. You will pick up your next color, and again, leaving that tail. Put the 2 yarns together so you have the tail of the yarn you're dropping here alongside the working yarn of the new color, and the tail of the new color is down in the back, hanging in the back here. So with both yarns, you will pull through the last 2 loops of that stitch, and pull the yarn you are dropping out of the loop, leaving just the next color. You'll turn your piece and make your next stitch just as you would as if you hadn't changed the colors. You'll make that stacked double, the single go in that back, and the single, getting that outer edge and into the stitch, and you will just work across the row. So now what you want to do is refer to the pattern for the number of rows and stripes that you will need to complete for your sleeve. Once you have those done and are ready for the neck, come back and I will show you how to create that neckline. Alright, so now we have worked our sweater all the way through the striping and are ready to make the neckline. These are the stitch markers that we placed earlier in the pattern, and we just moved them up as we went along. So it's these markers that are going to show us where to start and stop stitching for our neckline. I'm ready to begin making the shaping for the neckline. I've reached the marked stitch across the row. I've gone across the sleeve and across the shoulder. And now the directions have us to make a linked double crochet two together. Now the way we do that is to go under that horizontal loop, just as before, and go into the marked stitch, pull up a loop, and straight into the next stitch, pull up a loop. From here, you're going to yarn over, draw through 3, yarn over, and draw through the last 2 loops on your hook. And so what that did was bring these 2 stitches together into one, and it's going to make a little decrease, nice little curve for the neckline. Now after creating that stitch, you will turn your work. We leave the rest of it undone, and we are going to make the first stitch of the next row, which will also be a decrease of sorts. It's not going to decrease stitches as much as it's going to give us the curved look that we're going for. The first stitch of the second row of the neckline is a decrease linked double. So what we're going to do is make a single in that first stitch, and then this leftmost vertical bar here in the front, go ahead and go under that loop, pull up a loop, straight into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2, yarn over, draw through 2. And again, it's not a decrease as much as it is just the creation of that neck slant that we're going for. Now this is a wrong side row, so don't forget that as you complete your linked doubles across the rest of this row, that they are in the front loop only. Now once you reach the end, all the way to the cuff of the sleeve on this one, this is your final row, so you will cut the yarn, fasten off, and then we will be ready to make the second portion of the neckline. We have completed the first shaping section of the neckline and are ready to do the second. So make sure that you have the right side of your fabric facing. You can tell by the stripes that are on the front. So the way we are going to join our new yarn to the sweater is by creating a slip knot, putting that on your hook. Whoops. And then we will slip stitch in the marked stitch. So now we have the new yarn joined. What you want to do is make a chain 1, and then we will make that decrease linked double. Again, it's not an actual decrease of stitches, but more the decrease in shaping. It's going to give us that slanted look. So it's a single crochet in the marked stitch, you will pick up that left vertical loop, pull up a loop, straight into your next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2, yarn over, draw through 2, and then from here it is just creating the linked doubles all the way across the row. And this is the right side, so we are going under both loops of the stitches all the way across. So we will complete this row across the shoulder and the seam. When you reach the edge, you will turn and work back across until you have reached 2 stitches before the edge. So that does not include the single crochet that we have made here. You will come back across until 2 linked double crochets remain. Alright, now we are down to the last stitch of this side of the garment. We have reached the last 2 double crochets of the row before. Remember, we are leaving the single unworked. So in these last 2 doubles, we are going to make a linked double 2 together. And we will do that by going under that loop, pulling up a loop, into the next stitch, pull up a loop, straight into the next and very last double crochet, and you will pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 3, and yarn over, draw through 2. From here, you'll fasten this off. And something I didn't mention earlier at the fasten off for the other neckline, if this is the front side of your garment, leave a length of yarn about 3 times the length across the shoulder and sleeve. So you'll go down to the edge, that's 1, and back across all the way to where we started, there's 2, and pull off more. So about 3 times the length of this seam, and then you will clip that and then fasten off. If you do that, it just saves you a couple more ends from weaving in, because we will use this long tail for seaming. Now only do it on the front, so the front 2 necklines, and you'll have these 2 long tails ready for you whenever we do the seaming across the shoulder and the sleeve. So we are halfway there. What you need to do now is to complete the second piece of this sweater identically to this one. All of the different instructions for the stitches will be time-stamped below in this video, so as you're working along in your pattern, if you have any questions, you can come back to that. After you get that done, come back. We'll go over seaming and how to do that, sewing the front to the back. And I will also show you how I am weaving in the ends for the edges of my sleeves, because I do like the ending with the stripes on the cuffs, so I'm not going to be putting an edge. Hey, okay, me again. So as I was editing the video and going through, cutting out all the bad pieces, I noticed something. From this point until the end of the video, I will tell you that we are working on the right side of the fabric or the wrong side, whichever it happens to be at the time. And you're like, oh, she says right side, but that's very clearly the wrong side. Yeah, that's what I did. So the sweater, all of the instructions are still exactly the same. Nothing as far as that is wrong. It's just that I'm going to tell you right side and it's actually the wrong side, or I will tell you wrong side and it's actually the right side. So I apologize. I don't know why I didn't notice it, but anyway, so there it is. And all right, let's get back. Okay, and now I'm going to show you how I chose to do the seaming for my sweater. Here is the first piece that I did. This is the first sleeve. You can see this as at the neckline all the way down to the cuff. So the seam that I chose, the stitch that I chose to use, I refer to as a locking mattress stitch. Now the reason for me calling it a locking mattress stitch is because I learned a mattress stitch very different than some of the videos and tutorials of how to do a mattress stitch that you can find. So I did a little bit of research on it, and actually what I found is I think that it might be regional. So the term mattress stitch may be done one way in one area, and in another area it's done completely different. So to me, the mattress stitch that I know is this. But often you will see videos where a mattress stitch is done. They will go in one stitch, cross, up to the next stitch, cross, and up, and cross, and up. And to me, that is called a ladder stitch. When I was a kid and learning to do embroidery and hand sewing, that is how my grandmother taught me how to do a ladder stitch. And this is what I'm going to show you today is what she taught me as a mattress stitch. So I will call it the locking mattress stitch to keep from confusing people, because what seems to be the most common way to do a mattress stitch is not the way I do it. So I've kind of changed up the terminology for how I do that, and I'll also show you why I call it the locking stitch. Oh, let me first show you this. So I chose to sew mine with the right sides facing, and this is how it looks. I liked the way it has just this simple little subtle line. This is going to go across the shoulder and down the side of the sleeve. I liked this look. Let me show you what it looks like on the reverse. So this, for my sweater, is the wrong side. You can see it right here. Sorry, we have a black kitty. So if I pull this apart, you can see right there where that seam is. So this is on my sweater the wrong side. But if you like this look better, then what you would do is have your wrong sides of your sweater facing, and you would do the sewing that I'm about to show you with the wrong sides facing up. And that way when you flip it, this will be the seam that is showing on the right side of your fabric. I happen to like this look, so that's the way I'm going to do mine. So with the right side of my fabric facing, I'm going to sew this locking mattress stitch. And for this piece, it is from the cuff to the neckline. And with that tail that we left from the last row that we completed, so it's 3 times the length, so it's quite long. So it's 3 times the length of the shoulder. That's the tail that I'm going to be using. Now, another trick for you, if you do not first attach the 2 pieces together, when you go to pull your seam thread tight, it will cause a cinching or a bunching up right here at the join. So what you want to do first is to connect the 2 pieces, and that will keep that ugly bunch up from happening. So the way to do that is my yarn is coming from the right side. So I have threaded my needle. What you want to do is not in the first stitch, but in the side of that stitch. I just want to go into the side of that first stitch on the opposite side, and I'm going to pull that through. And again, this is quite a long yarn that I'm using. And once we get this pulled through, we are going to connect it back to this other side. Now the yarn is coming out the top of this stitch, so I'm going to insert my needle into the bottom, the same hole, and it's just going to create a circle. Just connecting the 2 pieces to keep it from cinching in on itself whenever you tighten the seaming stitches. And it's not a knot, it's just a simple circle, you can see. And I'm just going to pull them together, and just that one little stitch is going to make a big difference after you start doing your seaming. To do the seam, what we're going to use is only 1 loop from each side. So the way this one is done is stitch to stitch, nice and easy. With our needle, because the yarn is coming from the right side of the fabric, you want our first stitch to be in the left. So we are going to go under the upper loop of this first left side stitch. So you go up under that loop and pull your yarn through. The next stitch will be to go across to the opposite side, and again up under that upper loop, just the one, that upper loop on the opposite side, and pull your yarn through. Now we are ready to do the locking stitches from side to side. The way you do that is just what we have been doing. You will go up the next stitch under that upper loop, and you will cross over to the other side, except this time you will go into the upper loop of the old stitch that you came out of on the other side. So you are going into this new stitch and out the old. And pull your yarn. You can see how it's starting to zigzag across. And again, and don't worry about pulling them really tight right here. We'll do that after a few stitches. So again, it's under the upper loop on the same side of the new stitch. You will come out the upper loop on the opposite side of the old stitch and pull your yarn through, and you will just do that over and over. So in the new, and it kind of diagonals across, out the old. You can see it's going from one to the other, back through, and it does this locking. Now I also sew, and my sewing machine calls this an interlocking stitch, which is the reason I call this the locking mattress stitch. So in the new and out the old. Now after you get about 4 or 5 of these done, then you can tighten it up. I usually go about every inch, inch and a half. So like I said, on this garment it's about 4 or 5 stitches. We'll get those through. So that's pretty good. Now, so I'm going to tighten this together. I'll show you how I do that. I like to hold down from the first stitch of this section just to keep it from tightening too much or bunching. So I just pull those stitches and I hold that down. See, I hold it on both sides, keep those stitches steady. And you can see that it just kind of zips it together. So again, I'll speed this up, but I will show you again from the new across to the old. Okay, so again, you can see I have about an inch, inch and a half. I'm going to hold it down and pull that tight. Now, not too tight because you just want to keep an eye on it, make sure it doesn't start to cinch up or bunch up on you. And as you pull it tight, you will see that little ribbon start to form, and the back side. And so what you want to do is just to continue this locking mattress stitch all the way up to the neckline. Okay, so I have come all the way across from the cuff up to the neckline. I'm down to the last few stitches, and they are worked just the same. So you'll go up under the upper loop on the new stitch and across into the old. And that is the last stitch on the left side. And now we will go through the final stitch. So it's the last stitch on the right side, in the new, out the old. Oops. From here, I take mine and go back into the stitch that we just came from when it's your last stitch of the seam. I'll go back into that, and then I just weave in my end. So I'm going to show you how I weave in this end coming from the seam. Again, the kitty, she has no boundaries. So I will take this yarn, and when I'm weaving in an end, the first thing that I like to do is to get my yarn to the wrong side of the fabric. So following the stitch path of this loop here, I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to get the yarn to the wrong side of the fabric. Okay, so now I've got that yarn coming from the wrong side of the fabric. Gather it up, and I'm going to turn the fabric around. So now that I'm working on the wrong side, what I like to do is to pick a stitch path and just follow it along. When I'm doing this, I'll often turn my needle around and use the eye end just to make sure that I don't split any yarns as I'm weaving through. So I'm going to go down through here and pull that through. Again, what I like to do is to pick a yarn, pick a strand that's already part of the fabric, and just follow along. So this will go from here, coming out here, and it looks like this yarn goes in there, will come out on the other side, and so I will do that. I'm going to go through here, up under that yarn and through. Oh, see, I split that yarn. And then I'll go under this loop and through here. It's just about following the path of a strand that's already there. It will keep your yarn hidden, but also in doing this, you're securing this end so that it won't come undone when it goes through the wash or just through time of wearing. So I will do this several times for a good inch or two. I know it's probably overkill and it takes a little bit of extra time, but it's just something I choose to do to ensure that this yarn isn't going to come popping out of my fabric as I'm wearing it one day. So I'm going to get through this. Okay, so once I feel that I have gotten several inches of the tail woven in and I feel that it's pretty secure, now is the time where I'm going to turn that around and make sure that I do split some of the yarns. So I'm going to come through here. I'm going to go inside this chainette. Now hold it tight here on the end so you don't distort the stitch. But I'm going to do that a few times. And what that will do is just secure it even further into the back side of your fabric. So this time, instead of going through a long strand right there, I'm just going to split that yarn, and I'll split another and another here and just really weave that in. I'm going to go through, I'm going to do that one more time. And for extra security's sake, I will reverse come through itself, holding it so it doesn't distort stitches, pull it through, and cut that yarn. And again, this is on the reverse side of my fabric, so when I turn it around, you can't see at all where that has been sewn in. Okay, so here we are going to seam the underarm seam, and I have my right side of the fabric facing up here, so I'm going to fold this in so the right sides are touching, the right sides are facing each other, and I have the wrong side of the fabric facing me. Now with a new yarn threaded on my needle, I'm going to begin the same way as before by joining the two pieces. So I'm just going to find a side loop of a first stitch here, go under that loop, and leaving enough of a tail for me to weave in after I've got the seam finished. So I'm going to leave that hanging, and I'm going to pick the side loop of the opposite side. So pull that through. And again, it's just about making that circle to join the two pieces. So back up through. And again, it's not a knot, it is just a circle that's going to join the two and keep the stitches from bunching and cinching in on each other. So just as before, because my yarn is coming from the right side, my first stitch will need to be into the left side, and you will go up under the outer loop of the first stitch. So we're going to go up under, pull that through, and then across under the upper loop on the opposite side, pull that through, and now we can just begin that locking stitch where we go into the new and out the old, in the new and out the old on the other side. And we will just continue again making this locking stitch all the way up until we get to the underarm seam, and then we will turn and go down the edge. So I will sew up this side, up this underarm edge. You sew up your underarm edge, and I will meet you at the turn. Alright, so I have finished the underarm seam. This is from the cuff. You can see the seam line right here. It's the same as what I did on the upper seam. And all the way up through, and I have reached now to the point where it is about to turn from sleeve into the body. And so there are those stitches there. I'm just going to tighten those up. And then I just will shift the work. So I'll continue in that same pattern of in a new, out the old. It's just that it will switch from being stitch for stitch across on the sleeve, which was the foundation chain on this side and the top stitching of the final row on this side. So now we switch from going stitch for stitch to loop, because now we are stitching from the side edges into the side edges rather than top to top. And it's worked the same. You will just want to place your stitches evenly. So I'm going to pick up this loop here and go back into the old. And then from this side edge, I will pick up this loop here and across into the old. Now there is no specific stitch or specific loop that I'm going to be picking up. I'm just going to space them evenly, and I am going by how far these were placed, and that way it'll keep the seam looking the same. So again, I'm just going to scoot up about the same distance that I was already stitching for these. So I'm just going to pick up this loop and cross over, and the same. I'm going to pick up this next loop, and you just want to keep your stitches, like I said, evenly placed all the way down. And you'll want to, after every 1.5 inches or so, check your work, make sure that the ends are staying even and that you aren't accidentally pulling one side further than the other. So just every inch or so, check your work, make sure it's straight, and you are going to end up with the edges even. And so the stitching is the same. You will go in the new loop, across and out the old, up in a new, across and out the old. And you will continue in that locking mattress stitch all the way to the lower hem, where you will fasten off the same as we did with the neckline previously, and weave in the two ends from the cuff and the hem. So do both underarms and side seams. Then the very last thing we will be doing is weaving in the ends from the cuff edge that are still there. You can see that I have already done one sleeve, but we will still go over the weaving in the ends on the edges. And then after we get that done, you will have a completed sweater. So underarm, side seams, and we'll be back for these ends. So we have made it to the final task, and our sweaters are about to be finished. The last thing that we need to do is to weave in the ends that are along the cuff of the sweater. So I'm going to show you how I would be weaving these ends. This one here, you can see that this loop got a little loose, and so there's no fixing that. So what I'm going to have to do is hide it whenever I'm weaving in the ends. So the way I will do that is to pull that tail down, and then I will weave in the end going this direction, and you see how that's going to hold it down and keep that loose loop tidy. So you will hold that down, weave through under a few loops and a few stitches, get it to the back side, and then you will weave in your ends as normal. This one, the yarn is already to the back, so that's great. I'll just weave that in, and I'm just going to go down the line of every yarn end and make a decision on how it needs to be handled. This one, if I pull it this way, you can see that it will make this loop of the peach pop out a little, which is not really what I want. So I know that the weaving in for this one is going to have to go in this direction. So I will go in a few stitches, get it to the back side, and weave it in. This one also looks good, so I will just start to weave it in. Now it's coming from a like this larger middle hole here. So when you're weaving that in and you turn it to go through these stitches, don't go back through that hole, because if you follow the path, you can see that if you accidentally undo that stitch, it is connected here and it's going to loosen this entire stitch here as well. So you'll want to look at each one of them and make the decision on what is going to be the best way to weave each different end. Again, so I'm not going to go into that hole, but I will probably take it through this direction. This one, the same thing. If you're not careful, if you pull it down rather than up, this peach is going to show. This one again is coming out of that larger hole area, and if I undo that, if I pull it, you can see that it's connected here. So if you come back through that hole, it's going to undo and it will loosen this stitch. So again, this one you need to make sure to come down this way, and I think they're all going to be pretty much the same because it's how I fasten them off. So again, pulling up to the top and not down, and going down on this one and up to the top on this one. So they're all pretty much the same, but you just, like I said, want to go through each end individually and determine what is going to be the best route for that end. So we're going to get those done, and that's it. We have finished. I'm anxious to be finished with mine. I actually haven't even tried it on yet, so I'm pretty excited to be done. So I really hope that you have enjoyed the process and maybe learned a few things along the way. If you have any comments or suggestions, or if there's another pattern that you would like to see me walk through like this, let me know in the comments. I really look forward to seeing your Biel sweaters, so make sure and tag all of the projects that you make on social media, because I really do enjoy getting to see all of the things that everyone makes from my patterns. So if you've enjoyed this, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and that way it will let you know the next time we upload a tutorial. We'll see you next time.